is going to be on writing the equation of a line given an ordered pair and a slope. So our first problem, you'll notice that above I give you all three forms: point slope form, slope intercept, and standard form. When we do these together, we're going to practice writing them in all three forms, and then when you do your homework, they're going to ask you for a specific form, and you're going to have to know where to stop that problem or where to keep going. So we'll do all three forms for each one here. Our directions say write the equation of a line with the given information. So they're telling us in number 1 that our line passes through the ordered pair 2, -3. So if you're thinking of a graph, picture where 2, -3 is, our line goes through that point. And then we also have a slope of -2. So to start, we are going to write the equation first in point slope form. And that's where we will always begin because we were given a point and a slope. So in point slope form, you'll see it's written above. I'm looking at this one right here. So I'm going to write in what they give me. So where the m is, I'll put -2. This ordered pair they give me is an example of a specific ordered pair, which when we talked about point slope form, that means it's y1 and or x1 and y1. So when I'm writing in point slope form, I'm going to write y minus, just like the form. And then where the y1 is, I will write -3. So y minus a -3. Some of you now hopefully are realizing I wouldn't normally write it like this. So this is actually saying y plus 3. And then equals, my slope is -2, so I will substitute -2 where the m is. Again, I'm just replacing the m with what they told me it was, -2. Then I have a parenthesis, x minus x1. So x minus, here's my x1, 2. So take a look at that for a second, and hopefully you'll see all I've done is substituted. Where it said x1, I put 2. Where it said y1, I put -3, and where the formula said m, I put -2. That's point slope form. So in your line in your notes where it says point slope form, this is your answer. So that's what you'll put in that spot. If your homework or test or whatever you are doing was asking you to put something in point slope form, this would be your answer. You are done at this point. If you were wondering if I could have left it y minus a -3, I can't. I have to write that as y plus 3. And actually, when I write this answer in a test, I wouldn't keep both plus signs there. I would just have 1, because that double plus sign is redundant. So y plus 3 there. Then, to move to slope-intercept form, so let's say they were asking for slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Always, 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 you will first distribute your slope. So I'm going to, on the left side, have y plus 3 still, equals, and when I distribute the 2 to both terms, -2, excuse me, I'd have -2x, and then -2 times a -2 would be a plus 4. So now, to finish, I want to get the y by itself. In slope-intercept form, we want y to be by itself, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I would have y equals -2x plus 1. Lastly, so this is, excuse me, that's slope-intercept form, so let's make a note. On your line, you go ahead and put that in for slope-intercept form. And then the last one we will do is standard form, ax plus by equals c. So from slope-intercept form to move to standard form is actually pretty easy. We now just have to move this 2x to the other side. Remember, standard form, we want to have an x, a y, an equal sign, and a number. So I'm going to actually add 2x to both sides. And when we're doing this, remember, you can't actually add y plus 2x because they're unlike terms. So I would choose to write the x first. 2x plus y equals 1. So I'm in standard form, meaning I have an x, a y, an equal sign, and a number. I ask myself, did I break any rules? So when I'm looking at this, my first rule I'm looking for is, do I have a greatest common factor of 1? So when I look at these numbers in front, and remember there's a 1 in front of that y, can I divide any of these by the same number? So the 2, the 1, and the 1. The answer is no, I can't. So I'm not breaking that rule. My second rule is that my leading coefficient can't be negative. My leading coefficient is 2. 2 is not negative, so I'm good there. And my last rule is that all my numbers must be integers. So between my coefficients and my constant, I have to have all integers, meaning no fractions, no decimals. I don't have any. So right here, I can say I'm in standard form. So I've gone through all three forms for this problem and not had any problem doing that one from the other. They kind of go nicely. But you, again, will just be asked for a specific form on your homework. So you won't always have to do all three. When I test you, I'm going to have you do all three, so I don't have to give you a bunch of problems. We can demonstrate these three skills in one problem. But you will sometimes be asked just for one specific form. And so you have to know which form that is and answer correctly. If I ask you for slope-intercept form, and you give me this last answer, I'm going to count that wrong because you didn't know what the form was. So that's important for you to distinguish between those. I'm going to ask you to pause the video now and try number 2 and just get as far as you can. See what you can do with it. Get it set up as far as you can, and then if you get stuck, play the video till that point. Pause it again, try to work through where you got stuck after you get help on that, and keep kind of going along with that. So number 2, which is the last one we're doing together. Again, we were given an ordered pair, so this is an example of x1 and y1, and we were given the slope here. When I plug that into point slope form, I would write y minus 1 equals m, which is negative 1/2, times x minus a negative 3. So hopefully you would write that as x plus 3. I then have point slope form, so there's your answer. Hopefully we got that one. To move to slope-intercept form, I'm going to distribute my negative 1/2. So I would have y minus 1 equals negative 1/2 x, and then a negative 1/2 times 3 would be negative 3/2. You can do that in your head, you can do that in the calculator, you can do that by hand, however that worked for you. So then the last step to go to slope-intercept form would be to get the y by itself, so I add 1 to both sides. I would have y equals negative 1/2 x, and then negative 3/2 plus 1. If you do that mentally, negative 3/2 is negative 1/2. So negative 1/2 plus 1 would be negative 1/2. If you want to do that in your calculator, you want to do it by hand and write out the fractions and subtract them and add them, that's fine. However you do that, as long as you can get negative 1/2 there. Now, this is my answer for slope-intercept form. So if I was asked for that, that's what I would give you. Lastly, we're going to go to standard form. Now, when I look at this, if I had my choice, I would not work with fractions, probably, as a student, as much as I would with integers. I can add integers in my head a lot quicker. I know one of the rules for standard form is that I can't have fractions. So looking at my problem in slope-intercept form, which it's very common to have a fraction as your slope, so you're going to have a fraction here a lot. I'm going to see if I can just eliminate the fractions right now so that when I'm working to move my problem into standard form, it's easier to work with. So right now I see that I have the fractions half for both of them. And as we learned in a different lesson, I'm going to multiply this equation by my common denominator for my fractions, which in this case is 2. So I'm going to distribute a 2 to all three spots, and that's going to eliminate all my fractions. So as I do that, I would have 2y equals 2 times a negative 1/2 would be negative 1, then the x, and then 2 times a negative 1/2 again would be negative 1. So you'll notice I have no more fractions now. That took care of that problem, and I was just being proactive in knowing that part of standard form tells me I can't have fractions, so I eliminated them from the start. So now to move this to standard form, remember it's x, y, equal sign number, I would move the x to the other side by adding 1x to both sides. Again, I write the x first. So I would have x plus 2y equals negative 1. I check to see if I'm breaking any rules. My first rule is that my GCF has to be 1. I can't divide all these by any number, so I'm good. My leading coefficient can't be negative. My leading coefficient for this problem is that invisible 1 that we don't write in, so it's not negative. And then, do I have any fractions or decimals? I already took care of that. So this right here is my answer for standard form. Now, one other thing that you want me to be aware of is sometimes accelerated math has a different opinion of what standard form is than we do. Our answer, for example, is this right here, 2x plus 3y equals 7. We would say this is a good answer for standard form. Every once in a while, accelerated math likes to break a rule. The first one being, they don't always make the GCF be 1. So you will notice in this example right here, it's the same as my answer, except everything is times by 2. If I times this answer by 2, I would get 4x plus 6y equals 14. If that's the only choice that's best for your answer. So if I was given both of these as a choice in Excel math, I would pick this one. That's right. But let's say they didn't give me both. And the only answer that came close to the one I got is one that was times by 2 or times by 3 of my answer. That's the one you choose. They sometimes don't follow that rule. Another way they don't follow the rule sometimes is sometimes, and this is accepted sometimes, in other books, some books that teach it, they will say standard form is when it equals 0. But it is most common to teach it the way we are doing it, and most colleges do it that way, and so we're sticking with, your ACT, your MCA, they're going to stick with the way we have taught you. But you could sometimes see it equaling 0. And so what they did from our answer, the 2x plus 3y equals 7, is they wanted the equation to equal 0, so they minus 7 from both sides. So 2x plus 3y minus 7 equals 0. Now, that's one you can pick if they don't give ours as an option, and that would be the right answer. You might wonder why we're having to do these if they're sometimes wrong. I think that it's great for you to be able to manipulate these equations. Being able to recognize it in a different form and say, oh, that looks like my answer, maybe I should try it this way, that's a really important and good skill for you to learn, and so that's why we keep these as ones we want to give you, because I think manipulating the equations and seeing an answer in a different way is a really important skill for you to have. If you have ones like that, feel free to ask me too. I can double check them for you and make sure that you're picking the right one.